Welcome to another episode of the No Notes Podcast. My name is Morgan.
I'm JD.
And today we have a very special episode. We are talking romance movies. The good, the bad, and the ugly.
Let's go.
We've got our pink and red theme today. We are in the mood for some romance, Valentine's Day, cheese films.
This episode's going to come out on Valentine's Day, right?
Yes.
So, perfect Valentine's Day appropriate.
Sit down with the one you love and talk about some
the good, the bad, and the
us.
ugly in romance films.
Exactly. Yeah. So, how do you feel in general about Valentine's Day, romance movies, rom-coms, love?
I love love. I'm engaged happily. Shout out Mariana. Can't wait for our wedding. And I love romance movies. I think generally, I don't know. I'm a big sucker for a good romance. When I was a kid, Ron and Hermione in Harry Potter I was a big proponent of that when I was reading the books. I was like, oh yeah, like I love those guys. I don't know if romance has ever been like a huge genre for me, but I think I really appreciate a good romantic relationship put to screen because I just love seeing love. I love Valentine's Day, especially being engaged and having Valentine's Day together is going to be awesome. Very much looking forward to it. Yeah. And so yeah, I think I don't know if it's ever been the biggest genre for me, but I do appreciate a good romance. I know I have a couple screen romances that I really, really love.
I think I'm probably the same. I hate romantic comedies, so like people always think I hate watching romance movies. I'm like, I love romance movies, hate most rom-coms.
You like the dramatic, like very serious, here's what a relationship
I
is
want
like.
it to like hurt a little bit or like be so happy that I'm crying at the end.
Okay.
But I do love Valentine's Day. I also love love. Who doesn't? I guess people who don't have it.
Yeah. But then a lot of people wish that they had it. And so they have some love for the love that they might have.
Exactly. I am a huge, huge fan of Valentine's Day. It's probably in my top 3 holidays. Wow. Probably number 2 if it's between 4th of July and Valentine's Day for that number 2 spot. Behind Halloween, of course.
Okay, yeah, for sure.
And part of that is because, like, it's another holiday that you get to see, like, movies kind of, like, based around it. You know, like, you always have the horror movies coming out on Halloween, and you always have some cheesy movie coming out on Valentine's Day. It's, like, the whole, like, on Valentine's Day, like, on Christmas Day, like, it's one of those.
Let's go watch Jennifer Lopez and Marry Me, something like that. That was a big Valentine's movie a couple years ago.
I don't know how many people actually go to the theaters on Valentine's Day, but it must be a lot because I feel like they do a lot of special things for it.
Yeah, like got the AMC notification that A Ghost Story is coming to theaters for Valentine's Day only, which I don't think is a very Valentine-y movie. But,
no, but I am actually going to watch it. I already got my ticket.
Is your husband going?
No, he's gonna be working until very late. So I was like, I'm gonna go sit alone and cry and watch A Ghost Story on Valentine's Day because that's what AMC wants me to do, and I will do anything for them. I'm so excited. I love that movie. But yeah, Valentine's Day in the theaters is always crazy. Sometimes they have like 2 like super opposing films coming out. I think 2...
This year, I know it's Madam Web.
Yes.
The Bob Marley biopic and Lisa Frankenstein, which is a movie about a girl who falls in love with a corpse she reanimates.
It
right?
looks so bad, but I won't watch it. Also, so bad.
So again, one of those is like actually a romantic movie. One's like a superhero movie. One's a musical biopic. But it's like, but they know that people go to the movies as a date because it's Valentine's Day, so they're trying to put movies that a lot of people are going to want to see for a date. I think that's the Bob Marley and the Madam Web strategy.
I might be remembering this wrong, but I think when Marry Me came out was also Sonic 2, or the first Sonic was coming out that same day.
That's funny.
And it was a tough choice for me. But yes, we love Valentine's Day. We love love. Let's just get right into favorite romance movies. Let's do like our favorite, our least favorite, maybe like some guilty pleasures, and that'll kind of kick off talking about romance as a genre in general.
Do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first?
I'll go first. My favorite, I wrote down 5 that are like,
oh wow,
not only my favorite romance films, but also like probably in my top 20. I have Us and Them, which is a Chinese film. It follows a couple as through like a long amount of time on Chinese New Year, and it like cuts back and forth between what happens. And then number 2, I have Your Name. These are in no specific order.
Yeah.
Love Your Name. We talk about it all the time. A classic, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And then The Beauty Inside is a Korean one. It's a little different than my other choices, but I just really like it. It like puts a little happy feeling in my heart. And then The Lobster, which is also sad and creepy.
I don't know if I put The Lobster on my list, but yeah, that totally applies.
Oh yeah, I love the movie's so crazy. What's your favorites?
I have a good mix here. I love Moonstruck. Have you ever seen this?
No.
With Cher and Nicolas Cage.
Yeah.
And there's also like, it's a whole movie just about love. There's like a main love story with Cher and Nicolas Cage, but also Cher's parents have kind of their own quasi love stories going on. It's super funny, super sweet, just a super charming movie. Casablanca has like probably the greatest screen romance of all time. You've seen Casablanca, right?
I have not. I'm so sorry.
No.
I know. It's the Ruse movie. I'll watch it one day.
Pretty amazing. That's a movie swap candidate. Casablanca, amazing movie. First of all, one of the greatest movies ever made, but also has like a great romance at the center of it. The Princess Bride, I would say, is one.
Classic.
Like,
I wouldn't think of that as romance, but
it's got like fantasy stuff, but it's got a romance at the center, and I think that movie is a childhood classic, and it really holds up as a grown up. When Harry Met Sally is another one I would say. Have you seen this one?
Yeah, I hate that movie.
Wow, I thought this movie was so cute. I watched this on a plane and was like, wow, love is so great.
A plane is a good place to watch when Harry Met Sally. I can't explain why.
That's pretty funny. And then Your Name was another one that I would say. Like I watched. I've only seen Your Name once for our movie swap we did last year, and it was so good, and the romance in it was so sweet and earnest. I also do love Eternal Sunshine. That's an honorable mention for sure.
And then everyone's favorite. What do you hate? What is your least favorite romance films?
I kind of had a hard time with this one, honestly, but
I didn't.
Then please take it away.
Number 1, Titanic. I hate Titanic. I think it's the worst movie ever.
Okay.
But also the romance in it is really, really bad. And then 13 Going on 30 is a hot take. I know people like that movie. I think it's gross, and I will stand by that until the day I die. And then my third one, I just put anything that happens at Christmas time. I hate Christmas movies for the most part, and romance movies, especially cheesy ones. And you put those two things together, and it's like everyone who's ever made a film like forgets how to do it. I hate them.
Wow. I know for me, one that I despise, this is kind of a cheesy answer, The Christmas Prince. Have you seen this? The Netflix movie?
I think so.
Some friends and I thought it would be fun to watch this because we thought it was like, oh, it'll be so bad, it's good, and it was just so bad. I like had a hard time with that one. Anyone But You came out last year. I was pretty excited about it. I was like, I don't know, Glenn Powell. I like Glenn Powell. Yeah. Maybe it'll be fun.
I heard that was really good.
No, it's not. Sorry, it's not. I think it could have been better. And then like, I don't know, Adam Sandler movies typically have like some sort of romance in them.
50 First Dates?
50 First Dates is like the one exception. I would say I actually really do like 50 First Dates,
I'll
but
let it slide.
most of the time I feel like I'm thinking of Blended. Have you seen that one?
I love Blended.
Oh no!
Yeah. Not because it's good. It is really bad.
I feel like a lot of times when you have like cheesy comedies like that, especially ones from like the 2010s, like they're not as earnest as they were in like the 90s when you had like really good funny rom-coms like that. A lot of ones when you get to like the 2000s or especially the 2010s, it's been hard to have good romantic comedies that are actually funny and that have good chemistry with the leads. I think I was kind of hoping Anyone But You might do that, and it really fell flat to me. They just did not have good chemistry, and it was kind of awkward to watch. I don't know.
Yeah, and Williams later too, but I think like The reason I don't like most rom-coms is the calm part of that, and I just feel like they never get it right.
Except in When Harry Met Sally.
Disagree.
That movie's so funny.
Okay, and then a guilty pleasure, because if ever there was a genre that has guilty pleasures, it is romance movies.
Absolutely.
Mine is The Longest Ride. It's not good, but I love it. I watch it maybe not once a year, but maybe once every 2 years. It is really stupid, and the premise is really dumb. I think it's a Nicholas Sparks book, but the ending gets me every single time, and I will continue to rewatch it.
I would say 10 Things I Hate About You, for sure. This is a movie I watch a lot because I love it. It's not very good, but I do probably watch this about once a year and enjoy myself every time. It's so goofy and like daffy and silly and cute, and I love the leads, and I think it's super fun. I don't know if this really counts either, but Heathers, would you count this as a romance movie?
I have not seen it.
Romance like that.
A romance
movie?
I don't know. I've never seen it.
Heathers is another movie that I like really have a lot of love for, and it has this very twisted romance at the center. And Heathers is not a movie that is like gonna make anybody feel very good, because it's like it goes into some pretty dark places. But it is a movie that, you know, you catch me in the right mood, I'm gonna love watching some Heathers.
Those are what we love, what we hate. Romance is easy to love and hate. I feel like people are usually one or the other. It's either like, I love romantic movies, or I like hate it and never want to watch them, not interested.
I think you're right. I think for some reason this is the most divisive genre, because people feel like when you put a relationship on screen, it can be like disingenuous. It doesn't always capture like the hardships of things like that. I don't know.
Yeah, it's easy to not do well.
Yeah.
But so when you think of, like, if someone's like, oh, let's watch this movie, it's a romance, what is the first kind of like genre you think of? Like, there's a million genres within romance. Like, you have rom-com, you have like
so broad.
Romantic drama. I was gonna say dramedy. There's like a million
dramedy
things.
would apply, because you can have really like serious, intense ones. Like I was talking to my parents about this one today. I've actually never seen it, but 5 Feet Apart is, you know, the one that's like about the 2 kids who have cystic fibrosis. And I haven't seen it, but I imagine that's like a romance movie because it's about their relationship, but it's also deeply tragic. And so you have the romantic tragedies. You also have, and so typically if you're gonna say romance movie, I feel like my mind would go there. I would think about the sad, like The Notebook or A Walk to Remember, or the ones that end with like somebody dying for some reason, you know, like something that is gonna really play with your heartstrings. That, or probably like a rom-com. I don't know. Like Crazy Rich Asians is an example of a good recent rom-com. I think.
Like
and
The
something
Proposal.
Like that.
And like the
How to
ones...
Lose a Guy in 10 Days.
The classics.
Things like that. It's the cinema, the real cinema.
I always split romance in between like relationship movies and kind of like it's leading up to a relationship beginning. Like Your Name. Yes. It kind of builds to a relationship. The Proposal does that, you know. Yeah, it's like the finale of the film is the people getting together. Okay. Yeah. And then there's what I call like real Asianships. That's my Letterboxd list name. You should put that on the screen. Yeah. Real relationships. It's like they're already in a relationship and they're like working through something, and then it usually ends bad. It tends to be more depressing, but not always. I can't think of an example of one that ends well, but yeah. I mean, maybe Eternal Sunshine. Eternal Sunshine does like, kind of end well. It depends on how you interpret the ending of Eternal Sunshine. Yeah. A lot of movies that track a relationship. Have you seen Before Sunrise? I've seen the other one. There's like 3 of them. There's a bunch of them. I watched the first one in preparation for this podcast, and the whole thing is kind of like they have one day together, and they're like kind of falling in love, and so in a way it captures a lot of what a relationship is. Like it goes through the arc of a relationship in a pretty convincing way, and it ends with them like on a happy note, even though they're like split up. Like she has to go back to France, he has to go back to America, things like that. So I don't know.
I think, yeah, movies where the people are in a relationship for the whole movie, like Marriage Story,
Yeah.
ends like poorly, terribly.
Yeah. My theory behind this is like, and also why you just don't see a lot of couples that are happily together in films is it's just really boring. Like, it's like it's hard to build a story around like two people who just like get along and live life together and have a good time.
I think that's fair to say, because
Yeah.
one of the key components of story is conflict, right? And
Yeah.
so for a story to happen, your characters have to start in one place, a conflict is to come in, they have to end in a different place, changed by the conflict. It's super, like, rudimentary basic stuff. Like, and I'm not really conveying it very well, I don't think. But a lot of times when you have a story that you want to tell, there has to be a change. And a lot of times, I think the most satisfying change is when Harry met Sally. Like, they're two people who are friends and they like each other, but they don't like each other in a romantic way, and they have all of this tension building for the entire movie until bang, they're finally together at the end. And so like the conflict is them learning how to be together. And a lot of times that's 10 Things I Hate About You. That's a little bit Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. That's kind of Your Name. And these are really satisfying movies because they build and build and build, and then have the climactic tension of the couple getting together, and then you have the falling action of like a happily ever after or presumed happily ever after. But then we don't see what the rest of that relationship is like, because you have to introduce further conflict. And I feel like movies like Marriage Story or Casablanca does this, where it takes like a couple that has broken up or is in the process of breaking up and like looks at potentially reuniting them, and so you have that whole other like I am struggling to think of an example of a movie that's just here.
The
are
only
people
thing
together.
I can think of is like Shrek 2 and 3, like after they get married.
Yeah.
But it's not about their relationship. Like there's lots of like happy couples in films, but it's never like about them and their relationship, obviously, because that'd be boring. I do see this a lot though. Like I feel like TV series, it's a lot easier to like have people already in a relationship, especially if it's like a family show or like a Friends kind of situation where it's easy to have like one couple in a group and they're like just living the couple life. But
it's interesting that you say that, because part of the thing with movies and the thing with TV is that movies are a little more finite, TV is a little more flexible. When you watch a TV show, you want to get invested in a couple getting together, and then you want to get invested in like watching them continue to like figure out how to be married or how to be whatever. That's where the fun is. And then a movie, you only get a certain amount of time with characters, and so it's like it feels a little more satisfying to watch them go through something and being changed in that way. I don't know, that's interesting.
I kind of just want to get into why people love why they love watching movies about love. Like, what is it that compels us to watch romance so consistently, and it just continues to be made, even though it's like there's so many tropes that are overdone and done a million times, and people still show up and they still love it every single time.
All of us, to some level, we desire community. We desire to be known, right? Like one of the best things about being in a relationship with someone is the fact that like you have this comfortability, you have this ease with somebody. Even when there's hard things, you can talk openly or frankly, and it feels comfortable. And so when we see that depicted on screen, I think there's like aspirational aspect of it, where it's like, here you're showing me like a truth about the world and something that I want. And so you kind of watch it being like, wow, doesn't that seem nice? But then you also kind of relate to the characters who just are wanting the same things as every person. Like every person generally wants to be known, to be loved.
Yeah. It's just like a super relatable feeling that people think about all the time, constantly. I think that's what's different about, like, whenever we're talking about, like, the reason people love horror, which we talked a lot about on here, is, like, it's, like, a feeling that we like to feel, and it, like, kind of has this, like, innate thing inside of us. And this, I feel like, talking about love is that at the core, but there's also like so much of like, it's also what we deal with every single day in every relationship that we're like working through, and it's constantly up and down, no matter like what kind of like friends, family, anything. It's just always up and down. So no matter like what relationship you throw up on a screen, like someone is going to relate to it. And I think that's what makes it so great and so sad and so like obsessive. And the trope of like, I'm thinking of like the first episode of New Girl where she moves in and she watches Dirty Dancing like 100 times because she just went through a breakup. Like, it's that like feeling of connection that you get with like, oh, like I've been through this, and this person not only understands it but is portraying it like in a safe space where I can like feel those feelings and just cry about their relationship, even though it's like really about my relationship.
Yeah, you can see yourself in a romantic movie.
Yeah,
I think, a lot of times, like I don't know, because the protagonist, whether they're a guy or a girl, like wants something everybody wants. The connection to horror, I think, is interesting because horror is like you get to experience these strong emotions that you might never want to experience in a vacuum. It's kind of like a thrill ride, is how I think of horror. And then with romance movies, you get to experience to some degree like these strong emotions, but these are emotions that you do want to experience. These are things that you long for, that you seek after, whereas horror stuff you want to avoid. It's like the other side of the coin, and like you get to just celebrate, feel, experience all of the joys of humanity. And a lot of times you get to experience the heartbreaks too. Like La La Land is like it's like super joyous and then it's super heartbreaking, and it leaves you with this like incredibly emotional feeling because you're like, I just experienced something that is uniquely human in this vacuum. Like on behalf of these characters, with these characters, it's something that was translated to me. Yeah.
And I see a lot of things that which like I don't know why I keep relating this to horror, but
I think it's an interesting connection, honestly. Like I see where you're coming from.
I hear the same argument for horror and romance and like why it's so popular is like so many people make it because they're both like almost like cheap to make in time and writing, and it's something really easy to relate to, really easy to convey. And especially with romance films, it's usually cheap. Like, you just kind of need two actors, like the Before Sunset series thing. You just need two actors like sitting in front of a camera, like talking through feelings, and like that's enough to make something that will change a lot of people's lives. And
how many romantic movies take place in just like one location?
Oh man, yeah.
And it's like all you need is two actors who have chemistry, and that's where the tension is.
Yeah. Which is also what makes it so hard, though, is like it feels easy. It feels like, oh, like just write a love story. But there's so many that I think acting is huge in romance.
I think you're right.
Again, the opposite of horror. Like it's really easy to like scream and look scary. Sometimes, there's nuances to all of this.
If you're gonna act in a romantic movie, you gotta tap into something that is a lot deeper than like fear.
And you can't just be good. Like the person opposite you also has that chemistry with each other.
That's the problem with anyone but you. Yeah. Like in Anyone But You, Sydney Sweeney, like no chemistry with Glenn Powell. Like same vice versa. It's like these guys just don't feel like they have tension with each other. They don't feel like they like each other in the movie, at least. I know there's some rumors about what went on behind the scenes, like, and then the whole movie kind of falls apart because you don't feel like these characters actually like or dislike each other in a strong way.
Yeah.
But like some of the best, like Say Anything, has great chemistry with the two leads, even though the movie is like, to me the movie is like just okay, but the chemistry with the two leads is what makes that movie work so well. Is because you buy into the fact that these two teenagers who are kind of quirky and weird match each other's energies in a specific way, and then you kind of go along with it.
Let's take a break here, and then we'll end it with going more deep into like the good, the bad, and the ugly, and some of our favorites and why we think they're our favorites.
Sweet.
So we'll be back. Welcome back to the No Notes Podcast, talking all things Valentine's Day, romance movies, romance tropes, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I want to get into more specifics of what we think really sells a good romance on either side for like a romantic comedy, because there are good romantic comedies. There's some that I really like. I kind of like The Proposal.
Okay, that's a good one.
And then also on the other side of like a more serious like dramedy. That's like the only word I can think of right now is dramedy. And like giving some examples and like what our favorite is and why. And
so what would you say is like the biggest thing that makes a convincing relationship on screen?
I think for me specifically, and I know this is not an objective thing or fair at all, but being able to relate to something.
Yeah.
I think like watching a movie like Marry Me, right? This is a bad example, but it's on my mind. It's like about Jennifer Lopez and she's like this pop star, whatever. And like it's a cute movie and they have a nice relationship, but it's like so unrelatable that like I couldn't quite connect with it. But when a movie is just like really real, like I think like A Marriage Story, where it's like they have the stupidest fights sometimes. It's like almost comical, the like little things they're fighting about, but like, you know, obviously there's bigger issues. I think things like that really sell it. And I think that's like people kind of writing what they know, and like you can feel like the real stupid things that people struggle with in relationships and like dealing with that. So I think like it comes down to writing the characters, because what happens is it's either a man is writing the story or a woman is writing the story. And when it comes to a romance, it's like really hard to be biased about like when you're writing a problem in a relationship, like who's right, who's wrong kind of thing. So when you can get that right, it's really impressive. I'm thinking like Tick Tick Boom is pretty good on both sides.
That's
and then one I saw recently on TikTok, which I actually haven't seen this movie, but I think it's a musical. The Last 5 Years, which
I've never seen this.
We talked about. Yeah, I haven't either.
I think Iris brought this up on our musicals episode.
Yeah, it's like just the two relationship in it. I think they're like they're at the breakup at the beginning, and then it goes through the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And one of the critiques I saw of that is that it's supposed to be equal. Like they're both supposed to be wrong, but it's written by a man, and some people, I haven't seen it, so I'm not going to say if this is true or not, but some people think that like it's really obvious that the man is wrong in this situation. And
interesting.
I think having a realistic fight where both people feel like they're in the right is really hard when it's a relationship.
Yeah, I think you're right.
La La Land kind of hits on this, and I think it does a really good job of it.
I think La La Land's another really great example where it's like I feel like both parties in the relationship are very fleshed out, and you understand where both of them are coming from. I do think that When Harry Met Sally does this well, where it's like, you know, you understand the faults in both of them, and that Harry's like kind of a dum-dum, but you understand at least where he's coming from and why he's saying the things that he's saying, because the movie's done the legwork to establish his viewpoint on relationships as well as Sally's, and why they aren't able to come together. I think a two-sided romance is hard to do, but when executed well is really, really good. You know, a movie that I actually like on that front, I would say, is Tangled. Do you count this as a romance movie?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I feel like it's so cute, and both Rapunzel and Flynn Rider are like, you understand where each of them are coming from, and when there's like the tension of, you know, the mom like convincing Rapunzel that he's betrayed her, you know from understanding both of their viewpoints equally that that's not the case, and you feel a lot of the tension there. Movies that are a lot more one-sided in romance, I think something like Forgetting Sarah Marshall is very one-sided to the man. Pride and Prejudice is a little sided towards Elizabeth. You really don't understand what's going on with Mr. Darcy for a lot of it. And some of that's in the book, and it's really Elizabeth's story, but the romance there, like the reveals about what Mr. Darcy was really doing, bring the like conflict of the story to a resolution, but you don't really see his standpoint. I think
like classic ones from when I was in middle school, high school, The Fault in Our Stars, and like If I Stay, like those kinds of movies are very heavy. Like you care about the relationship, but because like the girl cares about the relationship, and you don't really know like what all the guy's kind of putting in because it's just like a teenage girl thing. And
Howl's Moving Castle's kind of like that to me, where I feel like you don't know what Hal is doing or putting into any of the relationship, and Sophie is just like pining for him the entire movie, and the movie it just ends with them being together, kind of like out of nowhere. That was one of my biggest problems with Howl's Moving Castle. Like, it felt like the relationship was totally one-sided, and then it came out of nowhere, them being together, and that is something that bothers me.
Warm Bodies.
I've never seen this. This is a zombie movie?
Yeah, it's a romance for sure. It's Romeo and Juliet, but he's a zombie. Sure. It's very like he's a zombie, but you're in his head, and then she like can talk, so you're not like in her head.
Got it.
But it's very much like, he like loves her, but the motives are just not there. And I think that's another huge thing with romance is like, you can't just like say, oh, they love each other. That's the motive. Like they love each other. They're trying to work it out because they have to have a reason that they love each other. I think it's really easy to just be like, here's two fully fleshed out characters and also they're in love. And you kind of miss the buildup of the relationship of like why they're in love, how they fell in love, what they love about each other, that kind of like pushes.
How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. And we'll talk about this later. We talk about pet peeves, I think. But like How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days is entirely built around the lie. And so the real relationship that happens really does just come out of nowhere. Yeah. Again, and not in a compelling way like Pride and Prejudice, in a way that I was just like, okay, I guess because the movie has to happen, they're in love now. Like Howl's Moving Castle, I'm like, I guess because the movie has to happen, they're in love now. It's like they don't really establish like why these two characters would like each other or find value in each other. I love when movies do that. Your Name is a great example of that. Establishing why two people would find complementary like values in each other and would want to build a relationship off of that. La La Land does that too, even though it ends in a heartbreak. Out of Sight is a great movie. I don't know if you've ever heard of this. Out of Sight. It's like a crime movie about George Clooney's a bank robber, Jennifer Lopez is a federal marshal, but they have a lot of chemistry and they kind of fall in love. And it's like, but the movie goes through a lot to establish like why they would at least be attracted to each other, why they both think there could be more in the relationship, and ultimately why there, isn't. But the movie works a lot of stuff in to make their relationship feel real and foundational and grounded. Breakfast at Tiffany's is another great example of this. Have you seen Breakfast at Tiffany's?
No.
But it's another great example of this where it's like you understand why these two characters would have a lot of love for each other because the script puts a lot of their individual distinct personalities into it and shows how their virtues or vices complement each other in a compelling way.
Yeah. Which like feels like so obvious, but it really does make the difference in all of these films.
I think so. I think as much as I love 10 Things I Hate About You, it doesn't go as far in that regard. I mean, actually, it kind of does with the main relationship. The sub-relationship with Joseph Gordon-Levitt is kind of like, all right, they like each other now. But when a movie can, like, again, that's my big problem with Howl's Moving Castle, my big problem with How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. But when a movie like Your Name or a movie like Breakfast at Tiffany's can go so far to sell why both parties would be interested in each other. Like, I've never seen Fault in Our Stars, but you're saying it's more like the girl side of the story. Like, why does he like her? Just because he's this magical guy who likes her, or because like of virtues in her? It's like when you can show both sides of a romance and why both people are attracted, it's a lot easier to buy into this and get on both people's side.
Which just brings out all of the depth of like every single interaction that happens, no matter how small and stupid they are. Another one of my favorites that does that same thing is Phantom of the Opera.
I've never seen Phantom of the Opera.
It's so good, but it's the love is really questionable in that movie. Do you have anything else that you want to point out that like pet peeves, the bad and the ugly part of this before we just go all in on what we love about our favorites?
Bad to me is movies that are premised on a lie. This is like a pet peeve I have of movies in general, but the trope of like movies being like or like their relationship being based on a lie, not in like the Don't Worry Darling sense where like he's literally trapped her in a prison of his own creation.
The absolute worst of this exact thing.
Yes. But like the proposal to some extent is like, okay, even though they're both in on the lie, it's premised on a lie for the family. She's the man. It's premised on a lie. Like she's pretending to be a man. And I don't know, movies like that
it's like,
start off from like a point of deception that like becomes love. I know it's like it goes back to even Shakespeare would do that, but that just like bothers me because you have to go through the whole like liar is revealed and it's dramatic and it's like blah blah blah.
It just feels like they're doing the like miscommunication trope without like actually doing it, but it's just as annoying. It's like, no, they're not just like not telling each other how they feel, which is also super annoying when it's like they both clearly love each other, but they just like they just bounce around and like won't ever say it. Like this is just as bad.
That too.
Yeah.
Which is that your problem with When Harry Met Sally? Is that they keep
probably I haven't seen it in a long
committing?
time, but
okay.
I remember hating both of them by the end of it.
Wow. That's crazy.
But there are movies that like have, because I'm trying to like say this and that doesn't sound in a bad way. There's movies that have like toxic relationships that are still like great movies. Like Crimson Peak is what I'm thinking of.
Never seen
and
The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes.
The Ballad
honestly?
of Songbirds and Snakes. What's the Phantom Thread? Like, those kinds of, like, I would count them as romances, but they like are in no way like, oh, I want this kind of relationship.
Yeah, I didn't even think of Phantom Thread. That is like the ultimate toxic relationship movie. But again, the whole movie just shows the arc of their relationship.
Yeah.
And the movie is amazing. It's a masterpiece. I love it like very, very much. But it's also like, it is not aspirational in any way. That's a great
So
point.
it can be a romance and still be like, you know, not cute lovey-dovey. I wish I had this kind of.
That's a great point, yeah. Because that's what I was thinking of Marriage Story. Is like, this is a movie about the end of a romance.
Yeah.
And movies can depict, I think, Phantom Thread is a super interesting point. If you haven't seen Phantom Thread, you should absolutely watch it. It's marvelous. Because when I think about romance movies, I guess I do always think about the ones that have at least somewhat of a happy ending. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, the romantic thing is the happy ending. Yeah. And so, but the other side of the romance is the breakup. Mm-hmm. And when you can depict either the breakup or the toxic relationship that continues even though it shouldn't, like you're showing another very real side of romance that's not as happy as I tend to think of romance movies being.
Yeah. Another pet peeve of mine is I'm looking at my list and I see A Star Is Born. Mm-hmm. I think that movie, among many others, really like is there. It's about a relationship, and it's like these two people falling in love or fighting or falling out of love, and then they're also trying to sell this like random storyline on the side. I think like Notting Hill does this, which is another really popular one that I hate. Where they're like, it's about a relationship and like that's what you're there for, like it's a romance movie, but then you have to spend like an hour and a half of the film time like, is she gonna make it as a pop star? Like I just don't care about it because like I'm not here for this. And it like becomes, I think Notting Hill, she's like a writer or an actor, it's been a while, writer and actress or something, where it's like such a terrible side story to supplement the relationship, but it's not like thought out, and so all of it just turns out bad.
Yeah, I totally understand though. When it's like when you're distracting from the romance, which is in paper, you know, like what I'm here to see.
Yeah.
With something that isn't as powerful, isn't as strong, that makes sense. Because there are plenty of movies that have like romantic subplots that aren't necessarily romance movies.
Yeah.
But Notting Hill, I think, is supposed to be a movie about their relationship, and when you have this other stuff going on, it's like, or A Star Is Born, it's like a movie about their relationship. But also, what do you think about movies where, speaking of A Star Is Born, one of the people dies at the end?
Sometimes it's really cheap. Like, I feel like that's where you're going with it. I've seen a lot of really...
That's kind of what I think, but
there's a lot of good ones. I'm trying to think of one. Like, The Fault in Our Stars. I think, like, it's a really cheesy, like, teenage one. But someone dies at the end and it doesn't feel like all is lost kind of thing. I think that's the problem with it, is it feels like the really basic, like... the thing they like tell new filmmakers to not do, where you're like you wake up and you're late and like everything goes wrong and then you like get to school in the morning and it's like, oh, there's no school. That's kind of what it feels like, where it's like, oh, like you're cheering, you're fighting for this, they're fighting, you're like going and you just like want this relationship to happen, and then it's like, oh yay, things are good, and then it's like, oh, now they're dead, and it doesn't really mean anything.
It's like why did I just go through everything I went through for like, just to be like depressed at the end.
There's definitely good ways to do it because it is a real thing that like happens to people.
Yeah,
and I just can't think of one that happens. I feel the same way about like when they like don't end up together in the end as well, and it's like all about their relationship. I feel like if you make it pretty obvious that they're not gonna get together, then it's not as disappointing as when it like feels like everything's getting really good and then it's like, oh, just kidding, one stupid thing happened at the end and now they're not together.
For whatever reason, I have more patience for that. Like, where like they don't get together at the end, and it's like, but you kind of understand where the breakup happened, than just like one of them dying, and it's like, well, this is so unceremonious. It's like they could have been happy, but now it's just, all right, well, I guess, you know, like it's not like I've wasted my time, but it's like, why? Like, why did I just sit through this for someone to die? It's like, now I'm just bummed, you know? So yeah, that's probably my last like big pet peeve is like, this is not something that but that's also more of like a personal.
Oh yeah. Some people probably like live for that, you know? Okay. And then let's finish on a good note as always. What is your favorite trope? We can do what is your favorite movie and why? Like, what are the things they do right? Like, sell a romance movie or trope to the audience.
You know, I probably would have said something like Moonstruck or When Harry Met Sally, Say Anything. I love the ones that are just very... Breakfast at Tiffany's is an example of this, where it's just very earnest, real, stripped down. It's just about two people who find each other and kind of have to battle to get together and then end up together, and it feels nice. Yeah. I love movies that are like that. I really like movies that are a little bit smaller. Before Sunrise would be an example of this too, where it's like, it's more intimate. It kind of focuses on the characters and what's going on inside instead of some big like external conflict. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind has like this big premise that's like super abstract, but then it centers it on their romance and does pretty well, but it does kind of lose focus at points. And so for me, my favorite trope probably is the Before Sunrises, the When Harry Met Sally's, the ones I keep referencing. Moonstruck, where it's just about people falling in love and finding a way to work out being together. Yeah. On the other side of that, though, Phantom Thread is one of, I think, the greatest movies of the 2010s and is the exact opposite of what I was just talking about, but is no less like an amazing achievement of movie making and of storytelling. It's like a stunning movie, and I would pitch that movie really hard to anybody who just wants to watch an amazing piece of art. Yeah. Know that you're not getting a satisfying romance, but also know that you're getting an amazing work of art.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, that's probably my favorite trope and some of my favorite romance movies that I just throw out.
I have been thinking about this episode for a very long time, and I love Valentine's Day, and I always try to explain to people that I do like romance, even though I hate rom-coms, because it's always like, oh yeah, let's watch a romance, and then everything they come up with, I'm like, I hate that movie. So I was trying to think of like, what do I actually like, and I kind of shoved it all into a little ball, and I think the trope that I love the most is love and time. And like how they affect each other.
It's a cool premise. Cool
and like almost all of my favorites go into this, and then a few others. I'm thinking like Twilight. Okay. Not the main theme, but like a main theme of their relationship is like they have like forever is eternally for them. Like they're immortal, you know. So like that is kind of to do with that. I really like Us and Them, which is a told out of order, what is that called?
Non-linear?
Yes, non-linear timeline of their relationship and like how it goes good or bad. Your Name, same kind of thing, a lot to do with time and like waiting for each other. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, time, healing. I think maybe that's like the underneath of it is like the healing of time that is necessary for relationships. And La La Land is one of these where like it covers a large span of their lives. So I think that is what my conclusion. A Ghost Story is a great one. It is literally all about time. It's more about time than it is about romance, in my opinion. And I think it's like it's really hard to tell these stories because you're like going through so much in such a short amount of time. I mean, you're trying to tell an entire life of a relationship in 2 hours. Like, I can't even imagine. Like, I think of like my relationship, like we've been married for a little over a year, and I'm like, I can't imagine putting that all into a movie, yet alone like a whole lifetime of like being with someone, or like trying to be with someone and then like throwing that all into a movie. So I think I like it because it's really hard to do well, and when it is done really well, it means a lot, and it feels really heavy of like everyone has had any kind of relationship, like friendships especially, you know, we're both pretty young, but where it's like it's just like years and years go by and it just means more that way. So I think that is my favorite kind of romance, and I kind of, watching all the ones that I loved, I was like, this is a hard thing to do, but I think when you do it well, it is really, really worth it.
Yeah. If you could recommend one movie for people to watch on Valentine's Day,
dude,
when this episode comes out,
go watch A Ghost Story in theaters on Valentine's Day. It will change your life.
If you're single or if you're together.
Yeah, oh man, it's so good. It's not, I don't even think it's a romantic movie. I don't know why they're playing it on Valentine's Day. I guess it is. No, it is. I don't know. I've only seen it once, and it was a long time ago, and I've thought about it every single day since. So
okay.
I think that's a great Valentine's movie. If you're just feeling like you don't want something fun.
I think you should watch The Big Sick. Have you seen this?
No, but you've told me a lot about it.
It's really great, based on a true story, love story that also deals with like health crises, and like it involves like your relationship with your in-laws, and it's just a very sweet movie, and I think people should watch it. It's super underrated, I think. Yeah.
All right. That's all we have. Enjoy your Valentine's Day and go out there and watch some movies about love. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Instagram. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.